just use a gun. Hello and welcome to today's edition of Liberty Action Network TV. I'm your host, Doreen Finkel, and today we are going to be talking about Sharia law. And in case you noticed, in the past we've had an increase of number of Muslims in the United States who want to push this upon American society. Joining with me today is a gal who's been working this. Her name is Susan Carroll. She is with Women Against Sharia. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
And I'm curious about you. What made you decide to pick something like this, I guess, in this battle that we're in?
Well, I guess it was around 2000, the end of 2009, beginning of 2010, when the Ground Zero Mosque was trying to get built. I joined that group and worked with the families from 9/11. And then I had downloaded a document from that was a government exhibit from the Holy Land Foundation. And what happened was it had the Muslim Brotherhood's ideas or game plan on how they want to infiltrate the United States and how they want to bring down the American way of life.
So let's take a step back a minute. What makes this Sharia law so controversial? In other words, what is Sharia law?
Sharia law is a basic way of life. It's the do's and don'ts. It actually, the word stands for the path. Literally, that's how it's explained in most. And it just it's such a way of life. I mean, it tells you, how to bring up your children, how to live. I mean, they go as far as how to tell you, to go to the bathroom, raise your children. I mean, it's just such a theocracy, and it's so against women.
And so, in other words, is this in the Quran?
Yeah, it's basically words from Muhammad, is how they describe it, derived from Muhammad directly.
So how directly does this affect our Constitution or American way of life here?
Well, basically, I mean, our freedom of speech, okay? It goes against our Constitution in the sense that our First Amendment right of freedom of speech, any speech against Muhammad is punishable by death. It's blasphemy.
And so how do they expect to execute that here in the United States, or have they been already?
They've basically started, I guess their plight is threefold. They get into our government. They're already in the White House. They're basically some judges, and then they've infiltrated a number of cities, such as Dearborn, Michigan, where they've completely closed off the city to their own population and made it a slum, and where the American cops will not go. It's called no-go zone, very similar to what they've done in London.
And do we have this any place else other than Dearborn in the United States?
I don't think as concentrated as Dearborn, but we have Patterson here in New Jersey. I know that there's a big population down in Virginia by Alexandria. There's a whole bunch of smaller areas, but I think Dearborn is the biggest.
Wow.
And they have their own congressman.
So you're saying that this Sharia law in some ways goes against the United States Constitution, and you mentioned their freedoms, or our freedoms. So in other words, what you're saying is these people are running people for office, they're going into our system, our education system, and so what do they plan on doing ultimately?
Basically bringing down the Western culture as we know it, shredding the Constitution and doing away with it.
And so now Sharia law being it goes against our Constitution. You mentioned number one, against freedom of speech. Are there any other amendments?
Well, basically, the Women Against Sharia, our platform is the 19th Amendment, women's right to vote, that was passed in 1920 by Susan B. Anthony, who's our hero. And basically, how Sharia law works against women is when they go into courts, it basically, a woman, you know, if it's decided upon Sharia law, it's child civil rights. Women cannot divorce men. Men can divorce, Muslim men can divorce women, but women can't divorce men. Such as we go through our legal system in order to get a divorce, child custody.
So, in other words, it's pretty much going against Western culture.
Correct.
And in you doing this, are you able to wake up a lot of Americans?
We did for a while, basically with the Ground Zero Mosque issue. But I guess, you know, there's so many issues that we have to, where our freedoms and liberties have been pretty much trampled on. We found that as much as we would like to, in getting the appointment of the Muslim judges. Now, we fought the Muslim judge that Chris Christie appointed here in New Jersey, and they confirmed him to the highest court in the state of New Jersey, which is family court. And that is just so outrageous, because this person, this Soleh Muhammad is his name, fully intends to decide family court, which is how they get their way, on Sharia law. Now, at one point, we did have a Judge Martin in Philadelphia, and we fought to have a decision that he made back in 2011 reversed by the American courts in the appellate division, and it was struck down, where he used Sharia law to decide the case against a Muslim husband who beat his wife. And he got jail time for it.
Wow.
And this is also part of Sharia law. A man can beat his wife without any consequence.
So where are the American women's groups on this?
I would like to
say the liberal ones, okay? Like, for example, Gloria Steinem. Gloria Steinem, yes.
Yeah, I was wondering where Gloria Steinem and NOW is, and these other women's organizations who were just not onto what's going on. I mean, they're so involved in their own causes. They completely have dropped the ball on this.
Now, here in New Jersey, are you familiar with any cases in our state? We had
a number of honor killings here in New Jersey where a father and his son beat the daughter to death, and they call that honor killing in the Muslim society, where they did not like the boy she was dating, and they felt that she was losing the Muslim culture and becoming too Americanized, so they killed her.
And what's been done about it?
Not too much. It's still going through the courts. It's still...
And so do the American citizens, do they know about this case?
Not many of them. There were a number of honor killings up in Michigan, which Robert Spencer and Pam Geller have been fighting. They go up at once a year, and there's a scholarship fund that was set up in honor of this woman. I forgot what her name is right now. But this is pretty much, you know, their way of life. If they lose their own culture and like the American way of life, such as blue jeans, and they're not allowed to show skin, wear makeup, the American music that they tend to like.
Right, they tend to like it, but in their culture
they're not supposed to.
Right. So now we have a lot of families, a lot of Muslim families in this country, okay, and they're having children, okay, and they're reproducing too, and they're growing up in the Muslim way, increasing their population. So what's going to happen to Western society?
Well, their plan is 20 years out, okay, and this was projected. Their plan is a 20-step program, and we had downloaded, I guess it was back in 2011, I think it was, a report. Dr. Anastasish had written up that their whole idea is to attack the American way of society and trample the Constitution as we know it. And CARE has been in the by attacking, what they do is very similar to what the left does, is a woman was supposed to receive an honorary degree from Brandeis University talking about against the Muslim culture and way that she was brought up. And they got Brandeis University to renege on the degree and renege on her speaking engagement. And CARE is one of the unindicted co-conspirators. It's the Council for Arab-Islamic Relations, unindicted co-conspirators in the Holy Land Foundation. They're very pro-Islam. They're the PR. They're called the PR arm for Israel, for Islam.
And you talk a lot about the Holy Land Foundation. Is that like a fundraising group?
Well, the Holy Land Foundation was indicted by the government as being a front group for the Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay,
back in 2006.
So it's a group.
It was a very large organization throughout the United States. And they were brought up on charges by the government, the federal government, in 2006 and 2007, and it was a big trial for a couple of years. And the leaders of that group were sent to jail, prison, for life, and fraud.
So let's go back to, even prior to when you started, let's go back to the 9/11 terrorist attacks, okay? Of course, all of us were demoralized, and what? Was that an inkling to you, said that you have to get up and do something about it?
I was very, very upset and saddened after that, because 343 firemen, my father was a New York City fireman for 27 years, and we lost a number of friends during that time, had been to a number of memorial services where they hadn't even recovered any of the remains of the loved ones to bury. And I started to read about Islam after, several weeks, and decided that, this is what we need to do. And then the Ground Zero Mosque became a big issue, and started to get involved with the families of 9/11.
And so that sort of gave you a heads up that something needs to be done. And since then, has this grown?
Yes, it's increased. Most of the time we find out, we had a large distribution list to inform people of certain cases that were coming before the courts, because Women Against Sharia also worked with a number of states to get passed American laws for American courts, where Sharia law could not be used in deciding a case, such as in child custody or divorce for women. And we worked with a number, I think there's 12 states now that have passed American laws for American courts. And I think there's 37 states have proposed this type of legislation through their states, but we just haven't been able to get as much attention to it to get it passed.
It's getting my head spinning. I'm thinking about this the whole time. Let's talk for a minute about the public school system, okay? And we know this Common Core and whatnot out there. And we've seen a recent number of cases or increase in which the Muslim religion is being taught in public schools.
There was a case in California, I think within the last few months, where Islam was giving a number of pages, like 10 or 12 pages of explanation of the religion, and Christianity was only given like a couple of paragraphs and explaining. And the parents went on revolt. They wanted the students to learn about all religions, not just Islam. And this is another infiltration and indoctrination of our young.
So how do we stop something like this?
Well, I think it's very important for all parents. I know the state of Texas, has proposed teaching a civics class and revising a lot of the history textbooks that have been put into our schools. And I think as parents, we have to learn what's in our children's textbooks. We have to get our schools, we have to get involved with our school boards, which is hard. I understand, life gets very busy and it's very difficult to get, but we must learn what is being taught to our children today.
But some people would say, and which is true, that all religions have good and bad, and there are some good Muslims out there.
There are.
And so I guess how do we recognize them?
Well, very few. I went to a seminar last year, and very few Muslims are afraid to speak out. There is one particular Muslim, Dr. Zudi Jasser, and I met him down in Police Plaza when he held a conference in conjunction with the police department, congratulating them on their, I think it was the search and recovery or something like that, agreeing with the police department that they were watching the Muslim community and what was going on, and congratulating the police department for their work.
So
he's the only one that's
now
really...
Okay, but suppose one does speak out. What can happen to them?
Well, it's very difficult because not too many will come forward. He's the only one who's really come forward. Most of the Muslims are afraid to come out and speak in conjunction with supporting the Constitution. They're afraid for their own lives because with Islam, if you speak out against it in any way, it's blasphemy and punishable by death. Women can get stoned for speaking out. Converting women, can get stoned. They can be put to death for converting to Christianity. Fatwas are issued against anybody who converts to Christianity. They demonize the opposition, very similar to the left. So they've pretty much taken over a great deal of our society.
But in this country, there is a connection between the left, the American left, and the Muslims.
And the Democratic, yeah. The Muslims have found by contributing to the Democratic Party and various different politicians, so to speak. That was printed in 2011 in a book called Muslim Mafia by Dave Gabbets. And he revealed the amounts that each politician got from the Muslim population. And there were Barbara Boxer, Frank Pallone from New Jersey. A number of big politicians have gotten large donations from the Muslim organizations within the United States.
So that's the connection. The connection is the money.
Correct.
Okay, because if you would draw it on ideology, the left also has the women's rights group.
Correct.
And the women. So what you're saying to me is the women's rights groups don't. It's not the same as ideology as Sharia law.
No,
in fact, Sharia law is almost contrary.
Correct. They basically have the same goal, that they hate the United States and they don't like our way of life. So it's incredible to think that any one person who lives here doesn't think that this is the greatest country in the world.
So let's say you're a Christian, okay, Christian woman, and you're living in Pakistan, in a Muslim-dominated country. What do those women have to fear?
They fear for their life on a daily basis. There was a Christian friend of mine who came from Pakistan, and he said that he was brought up in as a Catholic, and he said life was not easy. I mean, you basically had to hide your religion and your prayer service.
So you couldn't get up and go to a supermarket or any place without worrying about your life?
Correct. That's pretty much it.
So, but the way to beat that would be for you to convert to a Muslim over there.
Yes.
And conform to their way.
Conform, yeah.
So that's probably why many of them do that over there. They convert to that religion just so they can survive.
Yeah. Well, some of them, I mean, as we've seen, to connect the dots with, for our audience, what is happening, not so much, well, Pakistan is not as much as in Egypt and Libya right now, is they're killing all the Coptic Christians and burning churches. That seems to be the way that they're going now. You know, Islam is supposed to be a religion of peace and tolerance, and I think by burning churches and killing people on Christmas Eve attending church is a religion of tolerance. I find that ridiculous. And
wow. So you mentioned the word fatwa. Can you give me like some kind of definition what that is?
Well, it's basically putting a hit out on a person that, such as what the I guess the Italian mafia used to do when they wanted to put a hit on somebody. They issue a death warrant against that person, and there have been a number of people. Dave Gabbets has a fatwa against him. Pam Geller, Robert Spencer, Bob Lampert. There's a great number of people that have to be very careful when they speak out against Islam, in the sense that they have to have security around them at all times.
Because of their life. Because
of their life and speaking out and educating people about the seriousness and security of the Muslim Brotherhood.
So let's go back to the school system again. Okay, we have American kids going to school. They're getting dressed up in their jeans. Okay, then you have the Muslim kids. Okay, getting dressed up as what they do. Okay, you have two different cultures coming together. And so now, what does that do to the American kids when they see that? In other words, what I'm saying is the Muslim kids, don't they have to pray a certain amount of times?
5 times a day. Okay,
even in the public school they do.
They most of the schools have a separate room for them. Have been, and I think it's major colleges also have a room where they can go to.
So you have two different cultures coming up in the school system. And now you mentioned this room. Who pays for the extra room?
I have no idea right now. It's probably the taxpayer.
Yes, I would say so too on that one, because now you have to provide space for them. But a lot of American culture is Christian, okay? And you know, Christians they say grace, okay? You know, and they pray too. But you don't notice, like for example, when the Muslims pray 5 times a day, sometimes they even pray in the classroom, okay? That can disrupt the classroom. You don't see that with the other religions. No,
you don't. I mean, the Christians, I mean, the Buddhists, the Hindus, the Jews, they don't have that problem. They pray at their own time.
So does it seem that we are compensating for them?
We're accommodating them.
Accommodating for, okay, that would be a better word for it. So
because they claim discrimination. I mean, anything in conjunction with the ACLU, they've brought a number of suits, and the Muslim Brotherhood or CARE, they bring lawsuits and fight it in the courts. That's their standard operation.
So we could be sued, in other words.
We could be, yeah. And they have sued school districts. Number of schools have been sued because they don't provide a space for them, or they don't allow them to pray. The girls, you know, tend to be a little bit more Americanized, like they'll just, instead of wearing their garb or whatever you want to, their wardrobe, they'll wear jeans and sneakers and just wear a headdress of some sort, a scarf around their head, to Americanize themselves.
I want to move on to same subject but different direction. Governor Christie, what is his take on the Muslims? Does he sometimes act that he's for this, or? Well,
he was in favor in 2011 when we were fighting Soleil Mohammed to be nominated for the court system as a judge. He was all in favor. And what happened was, when he was on the campaign trail, they asked him about Soleil Mohammed, and he said anybody who opposed him, that he was the greatest American that he ever knew. And we had found out differently. Soleil Mohammed had indirect ties to the Fort Dix Six, who shot the Americans down in Fort Dix. He defended them. We also found out that he had ties to Imam Kutani, who was supposed to be deported by the U.S. Homeland Security. So we knew that, you know, he should not have been confirmed, but we lost that small fight.
So where does Susan go from here?
Well, we're continuing our fight. We're going to continue fighting with various different states to get bans on Sharia law being allowed in our court system. And we're going to continue that, and we're going to continue to fight wherever we see, you know, Americans not properly be justified, and our way of life and our Constitution prevail.
Susan needs a lot of arm muscle, right?
Popeye and our spinach.
Right. And are you doing this by yourself, or do you have others helping you?
I have some people helping me. I had a number of people in our team. We've basically, I had to, you know, I'm not quite as active, but I do go, I am speaking at various different places. I used to be a little bit more active on the speaking tour, but I had to take a break for personal reasons.
So we can call you Mighty Susan? Taking Sharia law head on,
right?
On.
We have to.
Right. And I'd like to thank you for coming on our show. Folks, we are out of time. And for more information on our show, please go to campusteaparties.com. That's campusteaparties.com. And thank you and good night. So, you have to pretend you're talking to me.
Okay.
So.